everyone. This is a Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Young, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy. Hi, everyone. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast, and I have a very special guest today. His name is Farouk Rajab, and the reason why he was special, I noticed him on LinkedIn because he was basically giving accolades to someone who was recently promoted, and just the words that he used to describe this person and how proud he was for just being a leader and growing into the leadership role he was in. And then what I did is after I saw that, I'm like, that kind of touched my heart. And then I went to the person because I knew the person who was promoted. And I went to the person and said, well, number one, congratulations. And number two, I like the way this guy, talked about you and just the interaction and his leadership. So what do you think about his leadership? And then he just went on and on about, how amazing Farouk was. And I thought, okay, I have to get him on the show. So that is why you are here. So welcome.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you very much.
Tell the listeners right now where you are right now in your leadership journey.
Currently the general manager of the Providence Marriott downtown in Rhode Island.
Oh, wow. At Rhode Island. You're you're way far from me. I'm in Colorado, but we're both in cold places, but you may be colder.
It's still cold is coming. It's fall now, so it's fairly reasonable. 50 degrees. I can live with that.
Oh, that's not too bad. Yeah, that's not too bad at all. Well, so we're most of us, when we lead people, it's not for everyone. But we're kind of driven to lead for some reason. What is it that drives you to lead others and even just to grow and develop others?
I was afforded this opportunity once upon a time. I was a good follower, and I've learned a lot from great leaders. And I recognized early on that there are people who are giants in our life and have a great impression on us. And I thrived in that environment, and I wanted to provide it to the rest. And I felt it's like a long life journey that you can be a good follower and a great leader, or the opposite.
Ooh, I love that. That's probably going to be the title of this podcast. Before we've even gotten into all the podcasts, a leader with heart is a good follower first. Ooh, Farouk, you just got the hair standing up my arms. That was awesome. Love it. Okay, so we know a little about that. What would be, when we think of the folks that are under your charge, so the folks that are looking to you for guidance, you as a chief follower, right? Why, how do they perceive your leadership style? How would they describe you as a leader? I'd hope, I'd like to believe that they see me as a leader who gives them that big box to draw in. I hire the best talent I can find, not to be breathing down their neck all the time and telling them what to do. I really hire the best talent that I can find so I can allow them to do what they are good at, and I will learn from them. I'll learn a lot from them. I learned from Todd and learned from many other people. Since Todd is our connection, but I've learned from many people who work for me or work with me, and I continue to learn, so I think they would look at that. It's a leader who allows us to be ourselves, and it's a leader who allows us to exercise our leadership into the building. I love that. So, this is a little off track, but I'd love to know, when you're talking about that big box to draw on, it sounds kind of like innovation, empowerment, open-mindedness. What are some of the ways that you draw that out in people?
We focus our conversations all the time on their learning and what are they, what is this journey is all about and what are they learning from it and how can they take those learnings and reflect on them into their performance and show us what they can do, and then we always talk about their journey in the future and where they're going and where they want to be. I had a kind of, you spoke early on about my post about my director of operations who just got promoted to a general manager, and that would draw your attention to have this conversation with me. But early on, 2 years ago, I sat with him and I said, "Where do you want to be? What are your, what's your goal?" And he said to me, I said, "Do you want my job? Because I want you to be a GM of full service if that's what you want." And he said, "No, not really. I really like to be a general manager of a boutique hotel." And him and I in the last 2 years we worked on that, and this is really what he is getting now as a general manager. Is it's a small property, it's a boutique in a sense of location and what it offers and the amenity it has, and he wants that boutique experience and the boutique hotel experience rather than a big box in a city that he runs. And we worked for 2 years on what the tools he can, what he can learn, what tools he needs on his journey to get to this point. So that's kind of like a long answer, I guess, to your question, but really it's communication, talking to the people, understanding what they want, and helping them get there.
I love it. I love it. This rings to me like even like customer experience. It's that same idea, and I've always talked about that connection and how they're so similar. But this idea that we have to ask our customers often what they want. We can't make assumptions. Like in your case, you were assuming a general manager of maybe a larger place, and he's like, "No, I after you took the time to actually talk to him, he said, no, I'd rather be boutique." And then you're like, okay, well, now let's give you the proper tools. Now let's work together. I love that idea. I also love the idea of you almost journeying with him, kind of hand in hand, this visual idea of walking hand in hand, him, giving him the tools and making sure that all the opportunities are set up so that in that 2-year time frame, now he's, now promoted to where he wanted to be. It's purposeful in nature is what I'm saying. It's not by accident.
Yeah, you're just as good as your least performer, and you have to work hard on making sure that everybody's on the same level and everybody's performing, and the it's kind of like sailing a ship. Everybody has a job, and you can't be the person in charge of the sales and the person in charge of the rudder at the same time. You have to have your own purpose in that sailing that boat.
Love it. Okay, so I always ask my guests this. So I know you didn't have a lot of time to think about it, but I think that one of the things that's really important is that we know that that we're all works in progress, that this is a journey. And so to that extent, I like my listeners to hear of a time from my guests when, for you, when you are not the best version of yourself. You weren't maybe this more enlightened leader that you are now. A day, an instance, an example that you can share with everybody. And then what did you do to kind of come out of that place of really not being that shining star necessarily to the place you are now where you're more of an enlightened leader?
Oh, I know, I can take you back many years ago, and it's, public speaking wasn't one of my things, and I remember my first management job at a hotel. My general manager was ready to greet a bus tour, and was ready to get on the bus and welcome them to our hotel, and he escorted me, and he said, "Come on, I want you to come and learn it and do it, and because this is what you're going to be doing," because I was the night manager at the time of that hotel, and we got on the bus, and he started welcoming them. He introduced me and handed me the microphone, and I froze because public speaking wasn't my thing, and I really didn't know what to say. And he took it back. He finished the welcoming of the bus tour, and we went on. And he guided me through that. And he wasn't, you didn't know how to speak or you didn't know what to say. Shame on you. It was a fatherly kind of like coaching moment where he said, I really understand what happened, and I'm sorry I put you on the spot. I didn't mean to, but This is important to learn. And I kept trying, and I kept at it. And I can tell you now that 25 years later, I look back at it. You can put me in front of a thousand, 2,000 people, and I'll speak very comfortably. But 25 years ago, I couldn't speak in front of 25 people or 50 people. But the point I'm trying to make is that leader at that time, the fact that he took the time to be kind and to be tender and to understand my situation and to help me and to guide me through that changed me as a person, changed me as a leader. And we need to provide that to the people that we work with. We want to provide them that tender, kind understanding of the situation, of why they were not able to do whatever you're tasking them to do, and how they can do it, and how you guide them through it.
Wow. Yesterday, I kind of did a crazy thing. I flew to Seattle and back in a day for an event. It's called Human First Club. And there are events that are popping up around the country to really discuss about how we can be more human at work, and what are some things we can do, as a leader with a title, as a leader without a title, right?
Yeah.
And so this idea of tenderness and gentle and going slowly and guiding, and it's very underrated. Really should be something that when we even look at like doing interviews, and bringing on new people, testing for, there's their emotional intelligence quotient that we can look at, and there are, obviously assessments for that. But just through our questions in the interview, trying to see how someone might work with someone in that exact situation. So you have a team member and they flop on a public speaking thing. Like, what do you do to guide them, and asking those kind of questions to see what the response might be would be key. Because what you did is just beautiful. I mean, that is the essence of a leader with heart, that just stops and pauses. And that person did that for you, and then you were able to do that for them.
What a great learning, I was very young, and I was able to learn from a great leader. And I always tell him that I still talk to this gentleman, and I still tell him I learned a lot from you when I was 22-year-old young person trying to be to lead. Let me start by leading myself, but to lead a small team of people.
Yeah, that is so true. And actually, the one other thing that popped up for me, which may not have popped up for you, but this idea of making assumptions, like about our team members' capabilities.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So I think that in that case, he made an assumption, probably just knowing you, thinking that it would be fine. And in that particular case, it wasn't, and now it is. It's wonderful. So there's kind of a learning on both ends that, as leaders, we need to make sure we test the waters with our people before we just throw them out into a place, right? Because I know I do. I tend to trust a lot as a leader. That's kind of one of my downfalls. I trust too much. And so then I assume the person has the right skills, or that they can get something done. And then when they don't, then I'm like, wait a second. And I get frustrated. But then in the end, it was kind of my fault. I should have tested them first, right? To make sure that they had it.
And if you ask me today, if he asked you if you could speak in front of 50 people, yes or no, I don't know. I can't tell you, because I don't remember my conversation with him before getting on the bus. I just remember the fact that I froze, and the fact that he was so kind and to walk me through it. And he, one of the best advices he told me at the time, you know more about what you're talking about than the people sitting on the bus listening to you. You know about your hotel, you know about the area. You can describe it to them. You can describe what's going to happen to them, and what they're going to experience at your hotel. They know nothing about it. So if you make a mistake, they're not going to recognize it. So don't worry. Don't overthink it. Don't stress about it. So those are guiding principles to me when I get on stage and I'm talking about a topic that I know more than the listeners about, is that you don't need to stress about it, because you really know a lot, and you can help. So, I'm just, you got to think of those moments in a person's life, and when they walk on stage, and how important it is to them, and you have to recognize it that way. Last night I was at an event, and um, and unfortunately, technology follows us everywhere we go. And the event was celebrating in our city, the hospitality individuals, the line level associates, and their accomplishments. And every hotel or every hospitality establishment puts a name of one person, and they get selected or not to this award. And I was at the award ceremony, and I'm sitting there, and my phone vibrated, and I looked at it, and they were announcing a room attendant for an award, and she stood up and she walked to the stage to receive her award. And as I'm looking at my phone, and I felt ashamed that it's her moment, and I have no right to sit there and look at my phone. And I turned it off completely, and I because I wasn't clapping for her, and that's her moment. It's not, and you need to celebrate those moments for our associates and all the people that we work with, and show them that we appreciate what they do, and it's part of this whole. We were talking about tenderness and kindness. It has to be at every turn.
Wow, you should have been at the event last night. You know what? Maybe when when we do some of the other ones, I might invite you to be there. I'll talk to the person who's coordinating it, because I do think, it's that you bring a unique angle to it, and I just think it would be a great. I love this idea of tenderness and kindness. We just don't do it enough, and especially by men or between men. So, that's a whole nother conversation, right? Is being
fair,
safe, and it's okay, and it's understood for what it's for.
Yeah.
Right.
No. Fair comment. But I'm not flying to Seattle and coming back to the East Coast in one day.
I know you're not. They do it all over the country, so it's East Coast too.
I know. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
It's East Coast. Yeah, you wouldn't be doing what I did, which was just ridiculous. Like, why did I do that? That was way too. I'm just a little nuts, but I wanted to make sure I was present, so that was key. All right. So when let's say there's just big groups are coming in, everything's just busy, everybody's kind of just running around different directions, and then of course it starts to get slower and the groups leave, and now it's time to reconnect with your team. What do you do to reconnect with your team in a deeper way, to just bring them all back together and back to center?
Sometimes the thank you. Start there. Let's start with the thank you, because you know how hard they worked, right? So you have to recognize how hard they worked, and you have to recognize that it was a busy time for them. We continue to improve. We continue to see greatness. So we continue, we sit down, we debrief, we talk about what we did, how we did it, and if anybody has any feedback on it and how we could have done better, have we done it perfect? Was it perfect? Was it good? How can we do better? And then reset. We hit a reset. But appreciation is never enough sometimes to the team. They need to hear it. They need to feel it in your behavior, in the way you carry yourself, and in the words you use. So just the fact that you appreciate them, you thank them, you get their feedback, you act on it, and you hit reset and you move forward.
That is so true. That whole. We can talk about, talk a good game in the way, but it's definitely how we walk the walk, for sure, as a leader. And I can appreciate your angle, your view on the simplicity of all of this. I think what we see organizations do often is overdo it. They spend thousands of dollars on different team building events, which are necessary sometimes. They spend just way too much on just these things that they're trying to create, connections. But true connection happens in those tender moments, in those moments where there's a family emergency, there's, something that's bugging them, and you reach out and actually, just try to figure out what's going on outside of work, where they're the whole person, right? So that's really where we see the beauty of true leadership with heart, Yeah,
and we talk about, we use a term here, we call it heart connections, and we try to exercise those things, the heart connections with our guests and with our associates, with each other. So we try to connect through the heart and have those moments of tenderness and kindness.
So for the listeners who, if there's someone here like just listening in that could be struggling in their leadership right now, or just kind of at a standstill, or just, confusion or whatever, what might be a pearl of wisdom you might leave these leaders with for the day, something that just might get them through the rest of the day?
The time will pass. The time will pass, and you just gotta keep thinking of it that way. The tough times will pass, and the good times will pass. So if you're in the good time, you have to prepare for the tough times, and if you're in the tough times, just hang in there, because good times are coming.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I think it goes back to that idea that leadership is a journey, and journeys don't usually have, they're not always from one point to another point. Sometimes they're circular, sometimes they're up and down. There's the vertical. There's just so many different ways that you take a journey. And so there are little detours along the way. And in this, what you're talking about is, you'll get past that detour and you'll go right around that corner. And I think that's pretty powerful. I mean, for anybody listening. And so, this has been great. And I definitely appreciate your graciousness to accept my invitation to come on, and also just giving these great words. I think it's exactly what everybody needs to hear at this exact moment. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you, just what would be the one particular way they might do that?
Email. You messaged me on LinkedIn. You can message me on LinkedIn. You can find me. Not a lot of Farouk Rajab on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn and message me. I'm very responsive. I get back to you if you have a question or a comment or words of wisdom that you want to share. I'm happy to listen.
Well, this is awesome. And, so anybody who's listening, hopefully you found value in this discussion. Boy, Mr. Rajab, you have some serious wisdom there. I'm going to make sure that I'm in Rhode Island. I'm going to go connect with you in person, because there really is nothing better than connecting during having the sensory experience when you meet with someone.
Absolutely.
Right. So I definitely appreciate you to having you on the show. And I do know that we have received a spike in listeners, a lot of folks that are joining in on the podcast. I think that they're receiving value in listening to the journeys and the trials and tribulations and successes of all these other leaders that are from all over the world. And so for the new listeners, I want to thank you, number one, for joining in on the call, listening to this. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes and wherever else you listen. We're on 25 platforms at least worldwide. So it's important that you know that that rating goes a long way, and it helps other leaders find this content. So I definitely appreciate that. And Farouk, again, thank you so much for joining.
It's my pleasure. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.